Hi, my name is Johan van Skalkwyk. The program that we're going to handle today is the built environment demystified. Now look, I know most of you people know how the environment works, what's the legislation, what's going for what, but it's always good to have a refresher every now and then to just catch up on what's been happening in the marketplace. Just a bit of background. I also specialize in helping candidates to professional registration, renewal of professional registration for the ones who are already professionally registered, helping mentors, putting templates and stuff in place so that makes that road less traveled, for the lack of a better word. But let's get back to the topic, the built environment. Now, it's a very interesting one, and if you refer to this very first slide, and it's a bird's eye view of the built environment, it looks quite hectic, and trust me, it can get hectic. And then if you throw the politics in that goes with it, trust me, then you've got a problem. But let's take it step by step, and I'll go through the process by first working it from the top down so you can understand exactly how the built environment works. And then from there, I will touch on the candidates, I'll touch a little bit on the mentors. I will also conclude or end off with continual professional development. This is a refresher on that as well. Remember, there's always new registered people coming through. Right, now let's refer to that slide first. It looks busy, and yes, it is busy. But in a nutshell, I'm going to summarize this and go into more detail. First, you've got the Department of Public Works. The buck stops here, basically. Government makes money available for the department. The department then identify various projects. The guys tender for it, and so the story goes. Now, underneath that there used to be an organization called the Council for the Built Environment. Now, I'm using the word used to be very lightly here, due to the fact that that organization, as we knew it, have now been absorbed into the Department of Public Works. So it's now a department within the Department of Public Works. Okay, so the CBE is supposed to be the overarching body that looks after all the councils in the built environment. Now, the councils in the built environment, there are 6. It's the Engineering Council, obviously, the Quantity Surveying one. We've got the landscape architects, the property valuers, and then the last, or the new kid on the block, the project and construction managers. Right. Now, interesting, there's a bit of politics that I would not like to go into regarding this matter, because we know how powerful ECSA is and how they basically manage to get processes, legislation and all of that through without active involvement of the CBE per se in some instances. Right, now each one of these councils are constituted by an act, and it's usually the Act of 2000, 43, 46 or whatever the case might be. So it's a legal entity. So they've got the right to say, you must do the following, otherwise you will not be registered as a professional. Okay, underneath that, and within the structures of these various councils, you will have volunteers that serves on these MANCO, EXCO, CPD, all of these committees, right? So these committees are structured for the reason to look after the qualifications that's out there, that the quality is good. In the case of ECSA, they will look at the Mobility Forum, which looks after the standards of the PRNs, which is the Washington Accord, the Dublin Accord, the Sydney Accord. Make sure we're on par, and there's a mutual recognition if you want to work cross borders. Right? They also look after the legal aspect. If there's somebody that steps out of line, that there's some recourse. Right. That is the fundamental structure of it. Right? Underneath that, you also have there used to be 3 different organizations. Now remember, these organizations are voluntary associations or institutes, and they're not legislated by government. So you voluntarily belong to them. There's 2 types. It's your business organizations and your voluntary associations as well. Right, I'll get to a little bit more detail in that. Then obviously you've got the firms that you work for, and then your professional registration. And running parallel to that is your continual professional development, which, by the way, is also legislated in the Act that you will do CPD or continuing professional development. And I don't want to labour that issue, but it's quite obvious why CPD has got a life and why it actually should be there. I know there's some people that will disagree with me. Right, let's move on to the next slide. That's not so busy, that can actually give us a better perspective of what I'm talking about. Right, here's an organogram or a better layout for how the structure works. Top down, first you've got the Department of Public Works, then you've got the CBE, the Council for the Built Environment, then underneath that you've got the 6 councils. From your left you've got the Engineering Council, then the Project and Construction Management Council, the Council for Architecture Profession, the Council for the Landscape Architects, the Property Valuers, and then also the Quantity Surveyors. On this slide, you'll see when I refer to the various voluntary associations, this explains it a little bit better. You will have a council, in this case ECSA. You will have 2 types of voluntary associations, right? You will have a business organization and a learned society. Now, your voluntary associations, in this specific case, your business organizations, those are organizations that looks after the business interests of your organization. So if you, an Oricon or WSP, Golder, Biggin, one of those consulting engineering firm, I just labeled a few big ones, then you as an organization will voluntarily belong to this business organization, hoping and trusting that they will go to government and negotiate on your behalf, go to ECSA and negotiate on your behalf, so that you as a business can optimize your opportunities, your in government, your in work, all of those things that goes with it. Now, your second type of voluntary association that you get is your learned societies. Now, those are the SAICs, SAIMECIs, SAIs, South African Institute of Electrical, Mechanical, Civil Engineering. Now, those ones are typically individuals that subscribe to that voluntary association. Now, there, the individual gets looked after. So the learned societies will then look after the interests of the individual, professionally registered or not, practicing as an engineer, contracts that's out there you can purchase from them, training events, all of those kind of stuff will be channeled through them. Right. Then also on the right-hand side, or your right, my left, you will see there that the councils are also responsibility to set the standards and the quality and the governance of this occupation, and then also they do the registration of professionals, and then obviously the continual professional development. Here's a brief summary. Where do you sit in the whole process? You'll have the Engineering Council, which is the council. You'll have the 2 different voluntary associations. Then you will have a consulting firm, which will belong to CESA, Consulting Engineers South Africa, as a business organization, which you can't belong to. And you as an individual that works for that firm will obviously belong to SAICI, South African Institute of the Civil Engineering. So now you get a feel for the difference between the various organizations. Interesting enough, the QS has started out where you can subscribe as a business and as an individual to the council. But I believe that those days are gone now. Okay, on the next slide we'll elaborate just a little bit more on also some of the functions of the Engineering Council. The council is constituted of professionals represented by state and by public. They have the role and responsibility to recognize voluntary associations. Now let's just park this one for a second. What is a recognized voluntary association? A recognized voluntary association will be a SAICI or SAIMECI, as I stated before, which means there are certain rules and regulations that they have to have in place, and they certainly has to have a certain amount of individuals belonging to that voluntary association before they can apply to ECSA to become a recognized voluntary association. Now, this is quite important because voluntary associations, and I'll elaborate about that a little bit later, also got the role to validate learning material for CPD. I'll get to that a little bit later. So if you want to become a recognized voluntary association, you obviously have to play by some rules. Apply to ECSA to become a recognized voluntary association. And once again, there's 3 different types. The business organizations, the learner societies, and then the one that's got dual registration. Right? So they're also responsible for that. Then the Engineering Council also needs to look after the fee and fee scales. Now, be careful here. They do not promulgate fees at all. The Competitions Commission will fine them heavily if they should do that. It's unfair competition. So what ECSA has done, and what they do on an annual basis, they look at various fees and what's happening in the marketplace and take all kinds of ratios to calculate a specific fee, hourly base, or project base, or whatever the case might be, and then publish it as a recommendation. Not as anything else, but a recommendation, as a guideline, for lack of a better word. So just bear that in mind. So whatever those fee scales are, it's not cast in stone, it's a recommendation. So you should negotiate, preferably at a higher and then lower down. Okay, then obviously I've stated the continual professional development before, and they're also responsible for the renewal of professional registration. It's one of the functions that they have to fulfill. And the CPD, I've got a slide on that I will refresh you on again. Right, let's just look at the candidates as part of the registration. The categories of registration within council, it's a bit boring, we all know it, but you get a candidate engineer, candidate engineering technologist, candidate certificated engineer, and a candidate engineering technician. And your full registration will be a PR Eng or professional engineer, PR Tech Eng, which are pure engineering technologist, professional certified engineer, and then professional engineering technician. A footnote here, there's always a bit of a juggle going on here between the competency standards between your technologist and technician, and how do I migrate from a technician to a technologist and all of that. That in itself is a whole program. So I'm not going to go into detail about that. Just a note here, there's a document that's been released. It's called the Identification of Engineering Work. It's important for you to go through that document because these standards are captured there, and one needs to look at it carefully to make sure that the work that's reserved is done properly and rightfully so. Just the outcomes for the candidates, just to give you a brief rundown, if you're involved in either training a candidate or in the environment where you mentor one or whatever the case might be, there is a new registration process that will kick off next year, 2015, if all goes well and if the systems are in place and if it's tested properly by ECSA beforehand, where they will move for the 4 fundamental or core competencies over to 11 outcomes. The system should be fully automated. So all the applications, TERs, all of those kind of stuff, training experience reports, will all be captured on the system live. The reason for that, well, we live in a modern world. We need to expedite the process. It needs to happen quicker without sacrificing quality. So all of these measures are built in. So we'll be looking for that space when it happens next year. This slide just quickly gives you the 11 outcomes, which you can squeeze through or read at your own leisure. The aim of the whole story is to have, as illustrated in the next slide, to have a well-rounded, full, competent engineer that's fully involved in the whole process of engineering, from inception right through to handing over. Right. I often get the question from candidates and sometimes staff that's been around the block as well. Why should a candidate register as a professional? Is there really merit in all of that? Well, I've thought about it and I've asked it around, what's the benefit in it For me personally, and I think for some generations who are money driven, I think it's a money thing. You know, at the end of the line, we all want to improve ourselves and we want to earn the buck. And maybe if we can earn two, it's even better. And if it means professional registration, then, you know, so be it. But that's just my personal opinion to some extent. So don't quote me on that one. Some of the tangible, real reasons, you know, peer recognition of your qualification and your experience. Being in South Africa, standing around a bar and there's a doctor next to you or an accountant or whatever, and they're professionally registered and you're not, you know, come now. Why aren't you? And we are, type of thing. So it might sound egotistic, but you can't get away from it. That's how it is. So that recognition of that status goes a long way, hey? Then also, this is an important one, the public confidence and professional in your professional competence. Clients want to know when they appoint a professional that the work is professional, that they can actually do the work, that the failures will be minimized, that if there is a failure, that there will be some form of recourse. It's also important bit to it. Then obviously international recognition. There's a big difference if you apply to Australia or New Zealand or one of those places and you go in as a normal engineer versus a professionally registered engineer. There's merit in that as well. And then obviously marketability just captures what I've just said. Exclusive use of names and reservation. Yeah, you can write PRNG behind your name, which is a good thing. And also when it comes to the identification of engineering work, that will have a huge impact on your status as a professional person. Right, just a brief summary or just a quick model on how the professional registration works. We all know it. For fun's sake, let's go through it again. First, you get your qualification. Then you go through your candidate registration process. The process takes a minimum of 3 years. However, market has shown that it takes at least 5 to 6 years for candidates to get to that professional registration. I wonder why. It's an interesting one. Maybe you can answer that question. Right, after you've achieved your professional registration, right, you're ready to go. And during that process, then you have to do your CPD or continuing professional development. And that's done over a 5-year cycle. I'll allude to that later just a little bit again. Right, and that's the full cycle. The holistic engineer that I was talking about earlier, the 4 outcomes that's now moved to 11. If you look at it, and you can put it in a bubble, no, it's not a rugby ball, it's a bubble, then it looks like that. You still have to have your 3 most important fundamental outcomes, which is your A block center in the middle, the use of engineering and contextual knowledge, to analyze engineering problems, synthesize solutions, that's your core and fundamentals. Then obviously you moved into manage engineering activities, which is your B activity, and communicate effectively. Yes, you heard that right, communicate effectively. So we must love doing that. And then your C quadrant there, obviously you need to know what the rules and regulations are. So it will be advisable for you to get on par with the OSH Act and the changes to construction regulations, all of that kind of stuff. What is in your best interest anyhow? And also to address impacts on the people and the environment, the softer stuff. So we can't just wipe a village out, we actually need to go and talk to the people, type of scenario. It's light-hearted, but I guess you get the point. Right, your D activity, the act ethically, so stop taking those bribes. It's not right, type of scenario. So be aware of that. Exercise judgment as well. It's another competency that's important. And be responsible. These gives you that holistic or drives to that holistic engineer that we're talking about. And then, believe it or not, lifelong learning, continuing professional development. So start now, capture it, get it done and dusted. If you're a candidate, you're going to do it when when you're professionally registered in now, so get into that habit. And it's not that bad, trust me. I will show you. Right, just a quick and dirty on the progression through the candidate period. The levels are there, but what's the most important thing is here, out of university, obviously you need to go and make the coffee, run around, do the copying, doing all of that kind of stuff. No, that's actually not the case. What we have here is exposure to the environment. From there, the candidate needs to be assisted by somebody in a specific activity which has been identified by the mentor, supervisor, trainer. Then participate in the activity, then contribute to the activity, and then lastly, to perform it without supervision, to be on your own and competent to do that. All right, let's quickly touch on mentorship. You know that there's a difference between a mentor, a supervisor, and a coach. All right, so the one can be the other, and the other one can't be the other one, and something down those lines. But these definitions will give us a good idea what we're talking about here. Right, the first one is the definition of a mentor. Person who guides and advises candidates through the training period to achieve the maximum possible professional development and professional registration in the shortest possible time, without sacrificing quality, of course. A mentor must be registered as a professional engineer or a professional technologist. Interesting thing here, if you're a PR Eng, you can mentor a PR Technie, PR Tech, and a PR Eng. But if you are a PR Technie or a PR Tech, you cannot mentor a PR Eng or a candidate PR Eng. So that's important. You can mentor down, but you can't mentor up. Unless in specific extreme cases where there's just not a mentor around to do that, then a letter to ECSA will suffice regarding this matter, and it should be fine. Right. You get two types of mentors. You get an internal and an external mentor. It's exactly what it says. If I'm an internal mentor, I mentor candidates within my firm, and I take care of that process and run with it. An external mentor, it means we make use of an external mentor. Say, for instance, and it happens with chemical engineering specifically. We're a consulting firm, and we've got a project, and we've got a chemical engineer that's doing civil work, but that person wants to register as a chemical engineer. Then we will appoint an external mentor through another company or government or whatever the case might be to mentor that specific person. Just be careful here. Staff poaching is a problem, will always be a problem. So when you go down that avenue, make sure that you've got some form of agreement in place that's solid, and that your staff don't disappear after you've put all that effort in. So be careful of that one. All right, the mentor and coaching, let's just touch on that quickly. The team responsible for a candidate's training would include a mentor who would be responsible for the planning and monitoring and training in the long term. Then you will have the supervisor or line manager who would issue the work and should ideally also act as the coach when briefing, checking the work, offering feedback, and overseeing the work on a day-to-day basis, guiding, helping, support, quick fixes, all of those kinds of hands-on stuff. All right. Your HR typically in a case like this, especially your bigger firms, would handle any logistical requirements associated with the graduate's development. So in other words, check that the registration with ECSA is in place. Check that the training and experience reports is done regularly. Have templates in place to document the meetings that the candidates have with the mentors. Those kinds of things, which is very important. Labor intensive, but if you do that right, then success is guaranteed. A young engineer or candidate engineer needs about 12 to 16 hours of mentoring a month. That is from Alison Lawless' SciC development program, just as a guideline for you to give you some indication on time spent. All right, in an ideal world, the role of the supervisor, not to labor the issue once again, the supervisor is expected together with the mentor and the candidate to plan the training task and tasked to develop the candidate's competency and review the achievements of each task. Now, it's that old story. We're too busy. We really don't get to it. But there's ways around it, and there's methods around it. So if you structure your emails or your reporting system or a template that floats around between the various, and I'm not saying cutting out the meetings are imperative. Then there's a huge measure of success there without really going into your daily operations type of scenario. It's important to get this right in a quick fix or a measure few years to look at what the candidate's done, see where the loopholes are and what the problem areas are, look at where the candidate needs to go and what exposure needs to happen, plan it according to that, go away and do whatever you have to do. In a month's time or whatever, you come back again, you've now got documented that, you just update it with the next, and you'll see progressively how that goes. All right, that's just one of my quick fixes that I've found in the past. All right, just another quick footnote on the role of the mentors. The mentor must participate in the planning and advise on this suitability of the program, of the work and experience of the candidate's development, ensure that the candidate is exposed to increasing demands in problem solving, management, impact assessment, and mitigation, judgment, and responsibility. Important here to note is that I find that in lots of the consulting firms, candidates are put into a specific position where they just design. And that's all they do. They design, design, design. They don't get site experience. They don't get experience to any of the other fields that makes them competent to be registered as a professional. Be aware of that. That candidate will not get to professional registration. So be sensitive to it. I know it's difficult. I know companies can't always afford to do that. But if that candidate's ambitious and want to get to professional registration and it's stuck in that rut, chances of that person leaving is quite big. So it's just a heads up. Let's just quickly look at CPD, Continuing Professional Development. Look, we all know it kicked off in 2006 and it's been going around, and it's actually reached that point now where everybody must have 25 credits over a 25-year period type of scenario. So we're all used to it. The culture is basically there. It's happening. So one of the questions that comes to the fore now, and this will help you with your training providers, or even if you've got material within your company that you would like validated. Lots of people ask me, but how do I do that? All right, here's a flow chart. Engineers, you would like flow charts? Here's one for you that explains the process. Okay, on the left-hand side, let's start. The training provider. Now, the training provider could be you. It could be a course that you as a company want to put together. It could be a company like BCA, which does the contracts, agreements, training, right? They get all their material together. They submit and complete a form to a recognized voluntary association. Now, remember I said earlier, it's important to note that it's a recognized voluntary association. If it's not a recognized voluntary association, you're going nowhere. ECSA is going to say, no, sorry, we don't recognize this training program. They submit all of that through to the voluntary association. The voluntary association then sends out invoice to the training provider, non-refundable payment. Okay? The training provider then pays that invoice, and only after that invoice has been paid, the process starts. Now, the reason for that, there's costs that will be incurred during this process. The expert that will be looking at the material needs to be paid. Staff within the voluntary association needs to be paid, and in some cases, one would like to believe that it's a form of non-funded income to, build a bit of cash, especially voluntary associations that battle. Right. After the invoice has been paid, the voluntary association then looks at the expert within the field. Appoint that expert, advisably 3, to look at the material, go through it, see if it's appropriate for CPD. And I'm talking about Category 1 here, by the way, the compulsory category. They then write a report back to the Voluntary Association, which a voluntary Association keep on file, that says, yes, let's go ahead, so many credits have been allocated to it, or no, amendments needs to be made, or no, this is just not appropriate for this environment, right? If it's a yes, then the Voluntary Association submit a form to the Engineering Council, who then captures that information onto a database with the allocated CPD credits, where engineers later can tap into to populate their portfolio of evidence, right? To close the loop, the Voluntary Association then sends the training provider a certificate to say, thank you for your application, it's been successful, it's validated for 3 years. Oh, by the way, most of the material is validated for 3 years, and so many credits been allocated to it. If it's no, then obviously they've lost that money and they can reapply with the recommendations, or if there's minor changes, then that they will be informed of that and they have to resubmit, but obviously at a lesser fee. Right, that's how the process works. Straightforward, simple. Some organizations do it faster than others. The price is not fixed. Some voluntary associations charge more than others. So it's worth looking at. I guess the rule of thumb here is the one that is the cheapest is the best. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying the one that is appropriate to civil engineering would be SAIC, electrical will be SAIE, or one of those. So that just gives you an idea if you want to go that route, because I get that question quite often. The last slide, and I guess you're so bored with this already, but let's just go through it quickly again, just to take that sting out of CPD. It's really, really not that difficult. And on the contrary, I've noticed that the people that I've spoken to about this, they haven't really done anything different that they've done in the past. They just structure it better, and if you look at it, it's more quality system than anything else. Yeah, paper-driven a little bit, but you know what? It's not that onerous at all. All right, you remember we've got 3 categories that you need to, or that you can get your CPD credits in. Category 1, this is your compulsory category. This is the one that everybody is chasing after. This is the one where we look for the validated training material. So if you go on a course, make sure it's validated for CPD credits. And for how many? It's important, fundamental, right? Now your category 1, you get 1 credit for a 10 hours training. Now 10 hours training could also be a 1-day event. So in other words, if you're out of the office 1 day for a training event, it's 1 CPD credit. So it's 8 hours. So that's your one option. There are other options as well, which I will talk to just now. So make sure that, and I find the easiest way to do it is book your year. It's 1 day out of the year to go to an event. Go and get it done and dusted. 5 credits over a 5-year cycle. Klar. Category 2, which is which is really, really difficult. It's your work-based activities, which means you have to go to work. So for every 400 hours spent, you get 1 credit. But I believe there's an amendment being made to this that for every 300 hours that you spend in the office, you get 1 credit. Okay, so there you have it. You go to work and you get credits. Interesting. Then the B is a mentoring one, which I feel is actually quite imperative in this environment. We know there's not enough mentors. We know you guys are so busy. We know all of that kind of stuff. So it's a center built in to help the youngsters to get a buy-in from the mentors, to also be rewarded for mentoring. So for every 50 hours spent, you get 1 credit. Your last category is category 3, which is your individual activities. Now this is really a nice one. If you belong to a voluntary association, remember, recognize voluntary association. Like SAIC, SAIMEKI, one of those, not CSA, because CSA is a business organization. You as a person can't belong to CSA. Your company belongs to CSA, so you can't claim if your company belongs to CSA. You have to be registered with one of the individual or the learned societies, right? So remember that one. And there you get 1 credit per year for belonging to them. Your B activities, interesting one, nice one. You also get rewarded for subscribing to industry magazines, for part-time lecturing, for informal training, for serving on committees within the Voluntary Association structures, ECSA, any one of those. If there's a register and you've been there, you can log it. It's part of your development process. So all of these nice things then starts adding up. And for every 10 hours spent, you get 1 credit again. Postgraduates, studies, all of those kind of things count in there. So if you look at it, seriously, not that bad. So fundamentally, here's on the last slide, just a quick summary of it. You need to get 25 credits over a 5-year cycle. Category 1, you do your 1 a year, go to that 1-day event, done and dusted. Now, the next thing you're going to say to me, yeah, but I've now done 3 or 4 courses. Now, I sit with 3 credits. What do I do? Well, carry the 2 over to the next year, or get 2 more and you've got your 5 credit and you're compliant. So you can do that. Look, there's other means and ways as well. If you are really that busy, or you are overseas or in Africa where there's bandwidth, there are channels that you can log into and subscribe to where there's video material that you can view, and you can get your CPD credits through that as well. So the means and the ways are all around you. Right, category 2 is taken care of. You go to work, you get your credits. And trust me, I've seen the timesheets of engineers. You work at least 800 hours a year, minimum. So you've already got 2 credits there. So if you don't mentor, then you've got your 2 credits in category 2. You've got 1 in category 1 already, that's 3. And then category 3, you belong to a voluntary association. So that's your 4th credit. Most companies that I know subscribe to industry magazines, have weekly meetings or strategic meetings and planning sessions. You claim your other one, 5 credits, done and dusted. It's as easy as that. All right, that's my story. It's a recap. I think it's most probably more appropriate for the young engineers and for some of the mentors. I hope you find it interesting. My contact details will also appear on here, so feel free to contact me at any time. I'm willing to help you with your candidate phase, your mentor programs, your application for renewal of professional registration, structuring your CPD, structuring your renewal of your CPD, all of those kind of issues is some of the services that we do. So, and we've been doing it for over nearly 11 years. So we've got all the expertise. And if I can't do it, I will find somebody that can do it. Thank you.